Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Lou, and for those new to the project, I'm working on building a sci-fi first-person shooter in Unity. Last time we focused on building out the weapon systems to make everything modular and easily configurable. This time the focus was on building the system to build the brain of our AI, as well as adding various sound effects from the Humongo audio library I picked up. So, let's get right into it. The big task for this devlog was figuring out AI once more specifically ones driven by behavior trees. Behavior trees are a decision-making system driven by a bunch of nodes. This node structure makes them much more flexible, reconfigurable, and human-readable than a coded state machine. The nodes can be split up into a number of types. Action nodes make up the bulk of the tree and represent specific things being done. Composite nodes control the flow of the tree, such as sequencing a bunch of children one after another, or selecting the best branch to attempt to run at any given time. And decorator nodes, which modify the return values of their child nodes, such as inverting a failure into a success or timing out the branch if it takes too long to run. To do this, I once again checked out the TheKiwiCoder's AI series, which included 2 videos on the topic. It included everything from creating the nodes in tree to building out the graph editor for them in UI Toolkit. However, one drawback of those tutorials is that there's a decent number of things still not covered or certain bugs not addressed in the videos. In particular, about halfway through the second video, I was getting an error implementing the undo and redo of the creation of new nodes. I checked the comments for a solution, and it turns out he's still actively updating the package despite not having made a video in a while. So, feeling like I learned what I could from the tutorial, I scrapped what I made and just downloaded the updated package from his website. It's fairly configurable, so I spent some time getting my AI guy hooked up to it, and now he'll randomly walk around using the behavior tree instead of the handmade target I used before. In the TheKiwiCoder's video covering what's in the package, he mentioned one of the reasons he's setting this up for download is because the next video he's planning on creating is AI bots using the behavior tree. And he wants to make it easy for people to follow along without having to do the 2 hours of tutorial to build the graph editor themselves. However, that video came out over a year ago at this point, so I checked in with him on Twitter to see if he might have posted it somewhere else, like on his Patreon. He said that the video is still planned, but that he's working on the editor to simplify that video. In the meantime, he pointed me towards the channel AI in Games, which talk about how different games implement AI. No specific code implementations, but it does talk about the various functionalities and how those lead to different behaviors in the end result. I specifically watched his videos in Halo 2 and 3 since those would be the closest thing I'd want to replicate. I feel like I learned a lot about how the behavior tree could be expanded to work with squads of NPCs quite well, but I also feel like I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I need to focus on getting one NPC working before I start figuring out squad tactics. So although I did learn a lot, there's still quite a bit to go. Specifically, I need to work on the core of the AI. Not the logic in the behavior tree, but the scripts that would take the behavior tree as an input and actually do stuff with it. Things like the AI inventory controller, target selector and sensor, and ability to use weapons, all of which currently aren't implemented. One of the other tasks I had for this devlog was the re-implementation of weapon sounds, along with other foley sounds like footsteps. As I mentioned last time, I got a package containing a few thousand sound effects and wanted to sort through them to see what I might want to use. Rather than directly import them into the project, I created a separate project called Resource Dump and put them there. It's a good thing too, because it took around half an hour just to import the package. I then picked through them and moved all the sound effects that I thought I might use into their own folder. Not only gun sounds, but various ambient tracks, footstep sounds, and smaller sound effects for things like UI. I figured while I was at it, I may as well dump other sound effects packs I have in here as well and give them the same treatment. This resulted in a folder of about 5 gigs worth of audio files. I separated each pack into their own folder and then put all of those folders into another one called Unused Sound Effects, and then moved all of those into the main project. Once everything was imported, I made a separate folder called Used Sound Effects that I'd move everything into once I found a specific use for them. This way I'll be able to exclude any unused sound effects when I go to make a build, limiting the size of the final project while also not having to go through the process of importing new sound effects down the line. With sound in hand, I did what I mentioned last time. I created a scriptable object called Weapon Audio Profile to hold all the audio clips for any given weapon, including a list so there's some variance in the gunshots that get played. In the weapon, I also created a basic function that takes in any audio clip and does the appropriate checks before playing it. So, from the fire function, we call the method to play a gunshot, which gets the appropriate clip and then calls the function to actually play the sound. I created similar functions that would retrieve all other sounds from the audio profile when called. They're all public functions, so rather than calling them through code, I set up animation events to call the appropriate function when a sound needs played. Once weapons were finished, I did a similar setup for footstep sounds. Scriptable object, list of sound effects, animation events, and all. I didn't go through the process of switching these sound effects based on what we're standing on because we don't really have an environment where that varies yet, so I created a single one assuming everything is concrete. For now this works and we can hear our boots clicking with each step. It's not perfect. In my movement blend tree I don't have an animation in the center, so when we stop walking, every animation triggers its own event leading to a bunch of footsteps in quick succession. There's a couple ways I can think to fix this, but I'm happy for now so it'll be a problem for future me. In the future, I'll also want to look into automating the setup of animation events so that they'll be set up in Blender rather than in Unity, as it's a bit of a tedious process to do by hand. If I had to re-import any of the view models because of a slight tweak, I'd have to manually redo all the events for every animation, so it'd be a major pain in the long run. For now though, I must say I'm quite happy with the result. The sound effects aren't perfect and more than likely will be placeholders until I get around to learning how to make my own, but simply having them makes the game feel much more polished to me. The next task I got done was adding bullet hole decals. This implementation was even simpler than the one in the previous project, and the result kinda shows that. However, our goal was more so to just visualize our points of impact to be sure the weapon spread and reticle were doing what I expected them to. Sure enough, my hunch from last time was correct and our reticle was way bigger than it should have been. Turns out I was doing what was basically the equivalent of using a diameter when I should have been using a radius, so I divide our value by 2 before setting in the HUD manager. Also, after messing around with the shotgun a bit, I found the spray pattern was actually square rather than circular. I'll need to figure out a different way of generating the spray to round off those corners, but it did give me a giggle since one of my complaints last time was having issues making a circular reticle. Turns out them being square was more accurate than I thought it was. Also, I went ahead and moved the maximum held ammo from the weapon script into the magazine module. I like the idea of ammo capacity being influenced by the armor on the character in the form of them having extra ammo pouches or something, but it seemed like any solution I thought of would have disappearing bullets when the weapon changes owner. I considered having an ammo box drop with all the excess bullets that couldn't be picked up otherwise, but decided to just keep it simple for now. This devlog was a fairly straightforward one, though I didn't finish the task of getting a working AI character, so I'll be maintaining that as the goal for next time. However, this time I'll be focusing more on that core logic that drives the character. As mentioned earlier, this will mostly be getting various scripts set up so the character can actually interact with the world. I think this will be fairly straightforward. I've essentially already done this once with the player, so it'd just be making the AI equivalents of each script. Aside from that, the other main task I can think of is to continue refactoring the weapon script to separate off our view model from the main object. This is for a few reasons, one being so I can separate out the animation and sound management of the weapons from the core weapon logic. However, it's more so because a bug rose up that irks me awfully. See, if you have multiple weapons and switch which one is equipped, you'll actually have 2 view models at once until your old weapon finishes its holster animation and deactivates. This annoys me like crazy, so I want it fixed. Beyond that, the other fixes I want to do are to fix both the spray pattern and reticle so they're circular instead of square. Finally, one thing I've noticed is that ever since switching up our movement code, that our slope handling has gone a bit weird. Moving side to side on a slope slowly pushes us down, which has actually been around for a while but has gotten worse due to this new movement code. Also, once we get to the top of a slope, it's possible that we get airtime instead of correctly transitioning to the next surface. Both just feel kinda bad, so I'd like to get them ironed out if possible. All in all, I'd say this devlog was fairly productive. Next week I'll be doing a video on what we can learn from Subnautica at the suggestion of one of you guys. I'd like to thank you guys once again for watching. As always, if you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like. If you have a suggestion for the project or another topic to cover in between devlogs, be sure to drop a comment down below. If you'd like to stay up to date on the project or want to see videos covering a variety of topics such as tutorials, analysis of games, or high concept topics, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you next time.